get into power that Raila Odinga has been using. It has almost worked, according to the gentleman here, in 2007. In 2013, it did not. In 2017, it did not. There are a lot of factors that a lot of people would consider to have not been the same, or to be, questionable. But at the end of the day, it has not yielded into him getting into power. So let's try and find out why it has not worked. And we were talking about similarities between 2007 and 2013, where in 2013, Musalia Mudavadi was, he bolted out saying he did not believe the combination between him and Raila Odinga would be fair. In 2007, I believe there was a similar thing with Kalonzo Musyoka, where he was seen as a presidential candidate for months. And then during that meeting in Tononoka, where a lot of people were chanting Nyundo, Nyundo, and chanting Kalonzo down, and he believed it would not be fair. So what is that about, that nomination or feeling that Raila is supreme? Fundamentally, what is wrong with that setup of coalition that is not in law?
Number one, Ben, you don't have political parties in Kenya. You have special purpose vehicles masquerading as political parties, and they are headed by very powerful personalities. Like, for instance, when you talk about ODM, if Raila today decides to ditch ODM, he'll walk out with everybody. And he's done it before with NDP and other political parties. If you're looking at Jubilee today, if for some reason the deputy president decides to walk out, he'll move out with about 50% of the political party. Now, if you're at a political party which is anchored on remoteness of ideology or a philosophy, then you can have free, fair party primaries. But if it's run by a personality, when it comes to nominations, the party leader decides who gets the ticket where, without fail. Maybe we need to create strong political parties like what you have in South Africa in the name of ANC, where the party rank and file, if they're disappointed with a particular leader, they go for a conference, they recall him, they tell him, Mr. Zuma, we are unhappy with your leadership, take a walk. Before the party runs with any position to the National Assembly or to the Senate, you go to a parliamentary group meeting where you engage in a brainstorming session, where you discuss ideas, you beat them, then you come into an agreement. Not when you have a parliamentary group meeting, either at State House or Pan-Africa, and your party leaders, they come and they give you instructions. It's as if they're telling you, if I need your opinion, I'll give it to you. Now, if we don't have those strong political parties, then we will never, ever have strong, if you don't have a free and fair, credible party primaries, which are anchored on ideas in a political party, then we will be wasting our time. Because when Raila Odinga sets up ODM, using his private resources, using his massive political goodwill, he says, and he has the right to believe, that he's the one who is going to call the shots. You're not going to crawl from the woodwork. You come over and take a political party that is created. If you're doubting this, speak to Babu Namwamba. If you're doubting this, you speak to Orengo or the Kisumu governor, Anyang' Nyong'o. So we don't have political parties in Kenya. But moving forward, if as a country, we first of all start by embracing the respect of the rule of law and order, then we kick out impunity, mediocrity, and corruption, then that will be the beginning of us having very strong political parties. If you go to a fellow who is selling maize in Eldoret, and you ask him, why are you in Jubilee? He will tell you, I'm in Jubilee because of Ruto. If you go to Kisumu, a fisherman will tell you, I'm in ODM because of Raila Odinga. Right. If Raila Odinga today decides to move to Jubilee, you'll have the entire mass of ODM going to Jubilee and saying we are very happy, even if they're not given reasons. That even explains why you have that handshake. Right. That explains why you have impunity.
All right. So let's digress and into a very good direction like Dismas is starting here. So, Mark, why can't we have proper political parties in Kenya? And former President Daniel Arap Moi, when repealing Section 2A of the Constitution in 1991 to allow for multipartyism, he warned Kenyans about it, saying this will make Kenya very tribal. Was he right?
Well, he was right in the effect that he was the architect of the same tribalism. We know that part of what he did in '92 was actually poison the chalice of multi-party for his own political survival. This is a fact that he sponsored certain political parties from certain areas to dismantle the opposition and defragment it. But there are two things that we need to consider. To bring an ideology into a political space, you've got to first deal with the psyche of the Kenyan people, and this is the psyche where we believe, as though we are still in the 1800s, that our tribe needs a representative. This is the madness that we see all the time. When people from different tribes will congratulate the president for appointing one of their sons, because they were in collective labor in bringing them into the world, and congratulate him because our son has gotten. So that's the mentality, that we think that our representation is based on individuals. Now, to do this, you need to do two things. Number one, you need to reorganize the psyche of the nation.
Is it possible?
It is possible. It is possible because you take certain steps. One of those steps is to do this. Number one, get rid of these nonsense parties by a function of law. In fact, the law in Kenya does say that a party needs representation. I think it's in 20-something counties. We need to begin to check those things. You know, are these national political parties, or are they a Baluya Football Club and Gor Mahia Football Club and Sondumiriu Football Club? This is the problem. You cannot have political parties that have the same kind of fan base based on football clubs. So that's one. The second thing that needs to happen.
Let me just jump in there, if you let me. The law will only address the academic requirements. Yes. That, you know, I can have a tribal I can have a party from Ukambani, but I make sure I open offices in 26 counties. That will not make people. Yeah, it's just
but
be
that's,
academic.
that's why you need to define what that office is. An office cannot be a place we pay rent for and then we open the doors once in a while. We need to define those things. But secondly, as Dismas has put it, we need to begin to discuss as Kenyans what is the difference in the vision that we have for the country. You need to ask Jubilee, what is your vision for the country, not for 2022, but in 2050, if you held power for that long, how would Kenya look like? You need to ask ODM, by 2050, how would Kenya look like? And let's look at these two templates and be consistently choosing between those templates. Right. That's what needs to happen. We need to move the conversation away from individuals to begin to discuss ideas. And that can only happen if Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta can begin to do something called succession planning, because that forces people to think about the future. Because the question is, if Raila Odinga is exiting the stage, whoever is taking over should not be a blood relative of his, but should be someone who shares his ideas. The same thing for Uhuru Kenyatta, so that now we can trace and track the progression of an idea, not the progression of genealogies.
All right. Hesbon, in 1 minute only, how do Kenyans get it into their collective psyche that I do not have to have my tribesman as president for me to benefit as a Kenyan?
Well, I think, one, Kenyans need to start looking at politics and playing politics and discussing politics, because it is the only opportunity in which we'll have a say on how resources in the society are distributed. So I wouldn't blame political parties for this. I would blame Kenyans, because we don't involve ourselves in political parties. We don't involve ourselves in politics, but yet we want to vote. We vote leaders and we give them power to decide how resources are distributed. And therefore, we have to be very critical and engaged throughout. Right. And the moment Kenyans start doing that, they'll start seeing leaders who are actually doing what is in the interest of Kenyans and looking at them as leaders for the country and not tribal chiefs. And I think if you look at what political parties are doing, because they are loosely organized in terms of structure, when they get into coalitions, people don't go in for any other thing other than power. They don't get that power. Whatever idea the coalition stood for collapses. But there is hope, because if you look at the engagement of young people over time, people are looking at success stories of the Sakajas of this world. People are looking at now how Edwin Sifuna has entrenched himself in ODM as the SecGen. And young people are beginning to realize that you can be a serious party official even at a young age. Yeah. And that is good for the country.
Right.
So I think that engagement is very critical.
Mutinda.
Well, one of the things that we need to appreciate is that our tribalistic nature of politics has some roots in colonialism. Because if you remember, at some point, the colonialists had actually banned all national political movements, and they allowed people to form political formations within their ethnicity. And even by the time we were going to Lancaster to discuss the new constitution, you remember very well, there were two main parties. One was called KANU, another one was called KADU. KANU was perceived to be the political party for the majority tribes, the tribes that are very major. Then KADU was a coalition of these small tribes that had a phobia, that they are going to be over-dominated by the bigger ones.
An interesting
Kalenjin
was a small tribe.
Yeah, because by then they were not identifying as one community. Right. By then, they were the Kipsigis, the Nandi. It is Moi, the political genius, who later thought that it was going to be very strategic to identify all the Rift Valley communities as the Kalenjin. As we came on, come multi-party again. That is when now it went overblown. One of the predictions that I fully agree with Moi, and probably because he knew where we'd come from as a country, he's lived our history, was that we are going to disintegrate. Our political parties are going to make us very tribal. But this tribal thing became a disease of the major tribes. Right. Actually, the 5 major tribes, that is the Kikuyu, the Rift Valley Kalenjin, the Luyas, Luos, and Kambas. These other communities do not have that kind of problem. So what we did is that in the 2010 constitution, which probably we are missing, is that we put certain conditions for one to be elected president that would force those who are contesting to go outside their community. One of them was 50% plus one. You know, sometimes we forget why we put some of these requirements. 50% plus one was out of the realization that no single community in this country can mobilize its own members to attain 50% plus one. The other condition that is also requisite for you to be declared president is that you have to have gotten at least 25% in more than 24 counties. The essence of those provisions in our 2010 constitution was to try and break this ethnic thing about, and I think so far so good. That's why I want to say so far so good. If you go down and realize why TNA and URP decided to form Jubilee, is because of appreciating the new legal dispensation, which with time is not going to make it possible for
we are out of time.
A monoethnic party to win the presidency. Probably everybody else should borrow from that, and with time we are going to have 2 political formations that are going to compete on ideologies, because now it is no longer feasible to do it on ethnic basis.
Thank you, Mutinda. We're out of time. But you have ended it on a very, I'll give you 30 seconds to, you have ended on a very good note that it is in law.
Yes, it is.
So it is, 8 years after the promulgation of the Constitution. So the question Kenyans have been asking, how long after this law will we see a tribeless
for the first
politics?
time, so that you know it is working, for the first time since multi-party, we had 2 major political formations. It's because they are trying to adapt to the new legal regime.
All right, so let's come back to our base question, which was, has Pentagon failed for Raila? So let's give Kenyans a challenge. Do you think, very quickly, Dismas, do we think in 2022 we'll have different alignments which don't base around trying to put tribes against, or is it too soon?
That will depend on President Kenyatta and Raila's handshake, and the reason why they had the handshake. They've got this unique opportunity of defining the future for us. They've got serious political capital. If their selfish interests are consistent with the nation's interest...
So is it a yes or no?
It's a 50-50, it's a probability thing. But allow me to make my special request. I came across a milk farmer from my village in Kisii who tells me Omtata has done a letter to the Anti-Corruption Commission about allegations of corruption at KCC. And it's my request through this special purpose vehicle that Mr. Mwangi Kiunjuri and President Kenyatta look at KCC. Because the place, according to the milk farmer, defines impunity, mediocrity, and corruption.
All right, we'll look into it even on our next show. But do you think 2022, or is it too soon?
2022 will be different for 2 reasons. One, the Uhuru-Raila pact, and then, of course, the Ruto factor. But the second factor that I think is going to play very large and looms very large is the Johos and the governors who have done their second term and are looking for political relevance.
It will
totally change the landscape.
Husband?
I think 2022 we will move away from the politics of ethnicity. The handshake and whatever is happening, the fact that a few governors are going, will give us a dispensation where a refreshing breed of politicians will coalesce along ideologies. The Kipagandis of this world, Sifunas, Sakajas, Joes, I think they will coalesce along ideology.
Mutinda?
Yes, out of necessity, there will be a need to balance our ethnic-based politics and ideology, because
so that we still have the ethnic. But
yes, it will be there. You know, I've told you it has its roots from way back.
All right.
But with time, it's going to be made more irrelevant.
Let's leave it there. We're already eating into Zinzi Kibiku's time. Thank you for joining me again. Always a pleasure to have you guys share your perspectives on the different issues we have in this country. Dismas Moko, political risk analyst, Mark Bichache, communication expert, Hezbon Owila, and political strategist, Mutinda Kavemba. That's why we'll leave it on the program this Sunday morning. Be sure to join us this coming Sunday and every other Sunday for 2 hours from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. as we dissect the biggest political stories in this republic. I'm Ben Kitili. Don't go too far. Zinzi Kibiku is coming up shortly with Weekend at 1.